Matt Bernie, you're taking a look at stakes action from Delaware Park on Saturday afternoon. Race number 8 is the Grade 3 Robert G. Dick Memorial, going a mile and 3/8 on the turf course for fillies and mares 3-year-olds and up. Before we dive into the field, I'd encourage you to head on over to DRF Bets. The address is drf.com/bet. All sorts of good deals for new members over there. Again, drf.com/bet is the address. Let's take a look at this field of fillies and mares that will be going the mile and 3/8 distance on the grass, and we'll take them right in post position order. Number 1 is Lamont Agree. It's worth noting this is a horse cross-entered at Arlington Park on Saturday afternoon as well for Rusty Arnold. Most recently, a decent third in the Kirtana. No match for Creative Thinking, who also goes in this spot. But it is worth noting this horse seems to do her best running, going these longer distances, and also this will be her second start off the layoff, so I would expect a forward move. The question is a forward move enough to make her legitimately competitive in a spot like this? The number 2 horse is locally based Good Roll. Good Roll has done most of her running at more middle distances throughout her career. You combine that with the fact that she doesn't necessarily have speed figures that make her a true contender in here, but it is worth noting she is 4 for 5 in the exact at Delaware Park. A couple of the horses that she really was splitting in the most recent start, where she finished second, the winner Mythical Mission returned to earn an 82 buyer in her next start, and the third place finisher came back to earn a 66. So it looks like Good Roll might be up against it a little bit from a speed figure and a class standpoint. The number 3 horse is Broken Bridle. Now, Broken Bridle is a horse that has a little bit of tactical speed, and I think it's a good time for us to consult the Timeform US pace projector. As you can see, the pace projector actually has the 8 horse out on the front end, followed by this horse, the number 3 Broken Bridle. It's been gone for a few months here for Gary Capuano. Is going to come back here and going a long distance of ground, the longest of her entire career. It is worth noting that most recent start, the Bogey, has come back quite live. The winner and the runner-up, they both came back to earn buyers of 100 and 99 respectively. A Raving Beauty, we know she won the Grade 1 Just a Game, and Inflexibility was a very, very game runner-up in the Dance Smartly last weekend up at Woodbine. So the form of that race is held up. The problem is this filly herself, Broken Bridle, didn't run particularly well. She finished 7th in a field of 7. So you're going to really need to get back to one of her better races, but she is very consistent. She's 3 of 17 overall and 9 times second or third from those 17 lifetime starts. We'll find out if the longer distance is going to be to her liking. The number 4 is Palinodi. Palinodi, from a speed figure standpoint, is very much, you can make the case she's the horse to beat. The problem is, and the problem that I have with her, is she's 1 for 12 overall, and 7 times she's run second or third. She's got a little bit of, she doesn't want to get the job done, and that's a major concern for me. Now, the distance is certainly going to work for her. She has the highest last out buyer in the field with a 92, and she's been running up against good company. You see Holy Helena's name in there, Santa Monica, the third place finisher of that Sheep's Head Bay, in which this filly, Palinodi, ran 4th. Santa Monica returned to win that Dance Smartly with a 100 buyer speed figure. The 6th place finisher was also a next out winner with an 88. So class isn't the concern. The concern is, can this girl get over the hump? Because so far, she's got a little bit of runner-up and third-place finisher-itis. She's a nice horse. I think she is one of the more logical and likely win contenders in a spot like this, but I'm just always very, very skeptical of horses at short prices that don't like to get the job done. This one goes out for Christophe Clement. The number 5 is Esquisse. Don't speak any sort of foreign language, so I apologize if I butcher that name. This one goes out for Graham Motion, another filly that it seems like now she's starting to put things together from a speed figure standpoint. From a form standpoint, she was no match for those horses in the New York Stakes. She was facing much better, the Sister Charlies of the world, the 4-star crooks of the world. She gets into a more advantageous position here as far as class is concerned. She's paired up buyer tops of 90 in each of her past 2 starts. This is her 4th start of the form cycle. I think the distance is going to be okay for her, but it is worth noting, for the majority of her career, she's been kept at flat mile distances. So perhaps it's going to be a little bit too far for her, but at the same time, I kind of feel like this is a good spot to find out if additional ground is really what she wants. And I've brought it up in the past with videos. I like paired up career buyer tops, maybe projecting another forward move here. If she does take a forward step, she's going to be a major player. That is Graham Motion's horse, the number 5. The number 6 is Sweet Sandy. Unfortunately, Sweet Sandy just looks a little bit overmatched on paper, but she does have a couple of races on her page, most notably, from a speed figure standpoint anyway, most notably the Glens Falls up at Saratoga last year, as well as the run prior to that down at Laurel in a state bred stakes race for Virginia breds. She has buyers that are at least mildly competitive in here, 86, mid-80 range. If she can get back to one of those, second start off the bench for these connections, she has a puncher's chance. Again, the distance, I'm not entirely sold. You see that they've really maintained her at sort of those middle distances, but they have tried her in a couple of longer distance races. Most notably, you had a 1.5 mile allowance race at Delaware last year where she ran second. So we'll find out if getting back out to a longer distance is going to help her. Second off the bench. The 7 is Tricky Escape. Tricky Escape, unfortunately, we have a negative formulator fact for Lynn Ashby. Over the past 3 years, first time blinkers off. 2 for 31, 14 times in the money, though, so nearly a 50% in the money strike rate, but a 118 ROI. This has not been a positive move for these connections. I do think getting away from the Araving Beauties and the inflexibilities of the world is going to be to her a benefit, but to be honest, I don't think the distance is her friend. I think she's better off at that 8.5 furlong range, maybe going out to 9 furlongs, but now you get out to 11 furlongs here. I'm not saying it's impossible because she is, I think, the class of the race. When you look and see the names that she's gone up against, you've got the Kittens Roars of the world, you've got the 4-star Crooks of the world going last year, you had Grand Jeté. So she's been running up against good horses, Zapessa as well. The question becomes distance and ultimately where is she from a form standpoint? Because really, going back to that Cardinal last year that was washed off the turf, you got to go back to the Violet. That was back in August of last year. We're almost going on an entire calendar year since her last turf victory. But again, she's been facing better horses. Perhaps, again, if the distance is to her liking and you can overcome that formulator fact, maybe Tricky Escape is a little bit interesting. The number 8 is Creative Thinking. I am most interested in Creative Thinking. She won the Kirtana most recently. That was at Churchill, going 1.5 miles, so you know the distance isn't an issue. And really, I think that's the key for this horse. It feels like Tom Proctor, ever since he stretched her out in distance, she's turned into a different animal. She was middling, just decent at those middle distances. Comes back off a little bit of a freshening from being down in New Orleans over the winter, and they immediately stretch her out. You get a victory in a non-winners of one other than field that admittedly is on the weak side. She didn't beat Bunch there that day by a length. But then you come back on firm going at Churchill, and she earns a career best 92 by her speed figure. She's 5 lengths clear of Daring Duchess. She's clear of Lamont Agree, who we talked about down on the inside, should she go in this spot. Creative Thinking also brings some versatility to the table from a running style standpoint. Can be forwardly placed, can sit just off. I think there's a lot to like here. And again, she's so lightly raced and she's proven that she wants to win races. She's kind of the sort of horse that under any sort of circumstance I'm going to be looking for. Tactical speed, likes to win races, and possibly is catching a little bit of a suspect field. Creative Thinking, to me, is an interesting win candidate in a spot like this for Tom Proctor. And the number 9 horse to round out the field is Giovanna Blues from Michael Dickinson. Again, another horse that's a little bit slow from a speed figure standpoint. Career best buyer came, though, in this race last year, going 1 mile and 3/8 at Delaware Park. So if you think you can get back to a mid-80 buyer, the blinkers come off. I suppose there's a chance that she can hit the board, but I don't love her chances as far as a win contender is concerned. But she should offer a very, very strong sort of price if you're a fan of this Dickinson entrant ridden by Mario Pino in this spot. So let's take a look at my pick here for this year's Robert G. Dick Memorial race down at Delaware Park. I'm going to go with the number 8 horse. I kind of tipped my hand a little bit. I think Creative Thinking might just be the now horse. And it's worth noting, these longer distance races, particularly the 1.5 miles of the world, recent memory, they've kind of taken turns beating one another. So you would wonder if this is going to be a springboard to get up to some of those races up at Saratoga, most notably the Glens Falls. If Creative Thinking continue on this path, where each of these past 2 races were both very, very strong for her, if she all of a sudden can string together 3 consecutive victories and she can earn another buyer in the low to mid 90s, all of a sudden she becomes an interesting sort of longer distance horse against much better horses down the road. I'm going to go with the number 8 Creative Thinking on top here for me, 8-4-7-5 in the 8th at Delaware Park on Saturday afternoon. If you're playing this race or any of the racing from Delaware Park or any racing for that matter anywhere, head on over to DRF Bets. If you're a new member, you can sign up and get a great bonus. The address is drf.com/bet for all the details. Scheduled post time for the Robert G. Dick Memorial. Race number 8 at Delaware on Saturday is 4:45 Eastern. Best of luck.